Hello and welcome to Lesson 1.3. This lesson is all about contextual values. Understanding an author's values is a significant aspect of exploring their context. In this lesson, I would like to explicitly break down what values are and why we need to be attuned to the values of an author and their surrounding society and culture when we are analysing literature. Believe it or not, many English students find it difficult to identify specific values in literary works. Many also struggle to articulate how and why specific values are represented. I am hoping that if you too find values difficult to identify and discuss, this lesson will help you to overcome this challenge and have a little more clarity around what values are and how to recognise them as you explore each author's context and their literary works. So what are values? Let's consider the Oxford Languages definition here, where values are defined as a person's principles or standards of behaviour, one's judgment of what is important in life. I quite like this definition. It's tidy and gives us two clear ideas that help to frame our understanding of what values are so we can more easily recognise them in literary texts. The first half of the definition focuses on an individual's principles and behaviour as a reflection of their values, meaning that the way they carry and conduct themselves is guided by a set of standards. These standards can come from an individual's internal, moral or ethical beliefs, or the standards can be dictated by their external world as social expectations impose restrictions on how one should behave. An individual might value self-discipline, moral control, and moderation, which would allow them to fit within a society that shares similar values. However, if a person values freedom, authenticity, and self-expression, they may struggle to fit in if their society's values clash with their liberal desires. The second half of the definition reflects the idea that our values are the things in life that are most dear to us. A person's core values will influence their choices in both life and in their artistic expression. Writers can use their work to send clear messages about what they see to be most important in life. They can also use their work to challenge the values of their surrounding world. In this way, an author's text will often support or reject particular values based on what qualities or behaviours they prize most highly. When we are considering the values of an author and their surrounding world, it is important to think about what they hold most dearly. What aspects of life do they think are most valuable? Is it their values that motivate them to write? For some authors, their values won't have as much influence over their writing, if any. For example, authors of comedic texts like sitcoms or other textual forms that are written for the purposes of sheer entertainment may not be as motivated to express their values through their work. However, this is not strictly true. Even if a writer sets out with an intention to leave their personal values out of their work, often they will find their way in. On the surface, even superficial texts that seem to lack deeper meaning, texts we wouldn't necessarily put into the category of literature, can often reflect what an author values. An author who values a strong sense of humour, entertaining storytelling, friendship, trust and loyalty might end up writing a popular sitcom rather than a hard-hitting political satire, but it doesn't mean their values aren't present. It more likely just means we won't be asked to analyse how their values are represented in their work in an English class. For authors of literary works, and I mean the texts we likely would be asked to analyse in an English lesson, their personal values or the values of their society or culture will have more significance. Often, an author who sets out to write a work of literature will be motivated because they believe strongly in a particular cause or perspective, and they want to share their convictions with others. They might want to right a social wrong through their work or expose a difficult truth about their surrounding society because they feel morally compelled to do so. Writing a novel is hard work. It takes a lot of time and effort to follow through on an idea and execute it in a cohesive, well-structured, edited, and coherent form. When we are trying to understand what made an author sit down and pour countless hours into getting their ideas onto the page, it can help to consider what their ideal world or life would look like. What can we find out about their perspective of what makes a life worth living? Did they have any beliefs about how people should or shouldn't live their lives? And did they have any ideas about how people should or should not behave? These are three very important questions that I would like to explore more deeply throughout this lesson. The question of what makes a life worth living is a good place to start. If we apply this question to the work of romantic poets like William Wordsworth or Samuel Taylor Coleridge, for example, we could answer that having a strong relationship with nature and experiencing a sense of the sublime and deep spiritual connection that the natural world can evoke makes life worth living. For poet Gwen Harwood, poems like Father and Child and At Mornington reveal that for her, meaningful shared experiences and memories of deep connections with family members and friends make life worth living. What I would like to point out here is that while it would be correct to say that Wordsworth and Coleridge both value nature and Harwood values relationships, notice that I didn't just give my explanation of their values by offering a brief label like nature or friendship. Students will often fall short in their analytical responses when they attempt to discuss an author's values as they label the value but do not go that extra step in unpacking the value and offering more specific detail. This is a skill that I will keep coming back to throughout this course. If I had $1 for every time I've written "be more specific" as feedback to a student's analysis of context and values, I wouldn't be a millionaire, but I would at least have enough to support my daily green tea habit, that's for sure. This is a super common critique, and not being specific enough in your discussion of contextual values is something that you can easily fix in your responses to elevate the quality of your written analysis. If you find yourself offering a generic label, think, how can I unpack this more? Why is this value really important to them? The author, that is. Keep asking questions until you get to the heart of the matter. You might have heard the standard English teacher mantra, show, don't tell, which we say to encourage students to use descriptive imagery in their creative writing. This skill alone could be its own course. Well, when it comes to contextual values, you need to remember another mantra: unpack, don't label. The question of how people should or shouldn't live their lives is another driving question that helps us to examine an author's contextual values. The question of what makes a life worth living focuses our attention on what authors value in terms of what they believe brings life meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. This second question is more concerned with the author's views on lifestyle. Does the author have any views on how people should or shouldn't live their lives? Are any of these views expressed in their work? Do they have rigid beliefs about how life should be lived, or are they more free and easy in their assessment of the ideal lifestyle? Do they have any criticisms of how other people live, or do they have any criticisms of how their society encourages people to live? Asking these kinds of questions can lead us to understand an author's deeper values and how such values are expressed through their writing.